Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I'm going to be sharing 10 eyeshadow palettes that I am the most excited to reach for this coming winter season. Now, personally, when I think of winter eyeshadow palettes, I am thinking of cool tones. I'm thinking of the occasional blue. I think just more smokier tones as well. Now, of course, I always say you can wear whatever shadows you want any time of year, but for me, these are the ones that make me feel the most wintry. So these are in no particular order, but the first palette I pulled is from Tilbury, and this is the Beautifying Eye Trends in the Super Neutral palette. Now, this is a very neutral, very cool leaning color story. We do have some nice neutral shades, but we do have this gray here. We have this very icy white, and something about this color story just gives me all of the winter cool tones that I really love. I actually really love these palettes that she came out with as well. I find them to be so easy to work with. They're so blendable. The mattes are buttery and pigmented. And while you do get some standard metallics in here, she also gives some of these super high shine diamond dimension shades that are just so incredibly reflective and beautiful. So I always love the looks that I get from this palette. This is one of my favorite little neutral, cool leaning palettes that I have. I just think it's so much fun. Next, I have a few options from Viseart. Now, if you've been around my channel for any length of time, you know just how much I love Viseart shadows. The first palette of theirs that I want to reach for this winter is the Muse Étendue palette. This was their holiday launch for last year, and I love this because this has a lot of those cooler tones. We do have a couple of warmer shades as well. We do have this gold here. We do have this more kind of orangey, rosy sort of tone there, but for the most part, this is a very cool leaning palette. It's definitely quite smoky. You're going to be able to get some really great New Year's inspired looks from this palette, and I just think it's so much fun. And even though we have all of these deeper, smokier shades, we do have some lighter, softer shades to blend everything out, to soften everything, if that's more of your preference. Whenever I see a sparkly navy shade like this, the first thought in my mind is always like a winter's night. That is always the first thing that pops into my head. So this palette is of course one of my favorite options for the winter. The next palette from Viseart is the Kashmiri Charmeuse palette. This is also a really beautiful option. This is also quite grungy. I feel like you can get a lot of really smoky looks from this one. We do have this shade which is kind of like a blue, brown, purple shift, and it's just gorgeous for the winter. It's not my favorite type of shade on me personally, but for a winter tone, it's so good. I love that you do get this bright pop here if you want more of that highlighted inner corner or sort of a spotlight or a halo eye. This is great for that, but all of the mattes are just incredibly muted and cool leaning and just so stunning. And then we also get some of these richer berry tones, which are also shades I think of for winter. So this one here is very shifty and reflective and just stunning. And then we have some softer pinks to work with it. This palette is really just catering to my neutrals, my muted tones, my cool tones, with some bright pops here and there, and then a berry pop in there too. And I just think this palette is so beautiful. The last Viseart palette I want to mention is one that came out within the last few months. This is their Paris Nuit Étoilée. So this palette again is just the embodiment of winter for me because you get this row of very muted, very neutral shades. They're going to be soft. They're going to help you get a nice blend. We do have a brighter pink in here, but then we have a silver. We have this gorgeous shimmery purple. We have this more berry tone over here. On the bottom, we get this gorgeous deep blue. We get this deep plum, and then there's this super sparkly navy, and then a dark brown to really anchor everything or use as a liner. This is just a deep, moody, murky night sky in the middle of winter to me. I picture winter solstice. It's just so cool and beautiful. I think this would be a stunning New Year's palette as well because you're going to get some really smoky looks from this palette. I think it's so beautiful. We know I love Viseart in general. They have one of my absolute favorite formulas in terms of blendability, in terms of their shimmers that I just think are gorgeous. I love their formula so much. The next palette I have is from Makeup by Mario, and this was his holiday launch for last year. This is the Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette. So this palette has a lot of his standard, very muted neutrals that he tends to put in these palettes, but they are a little bit more cool leaning. We also get a gray in here. We do get this more charcoal metallic, a deep navy blue. We have a black. We have this bright white, which is gorgeous as well. This is actually the palette I'm wearing today, and I forgot how much I liked this one. I was kind of critical of this year's Ethereal Eyes palette because what makes his Ethereal Eyes palettes ethereal is some of these very wet, sparkly toppers. Now, not everybody likes those. I totally understand that. But those are what make these ethereal palettes, and this year's palette didn't have any. This year's palette was just straight metallics and shimmers, which is fine. They're beautiful, but this one really lives up to that ethereal name. So today I took this shade in the crease, and then I used this gray one for the outer corner and a bit of that liner. I had to dip into another palette to put down sort of a matte white to sort of clean everything up on the inner portion of the lid. And then I topped everything with this white shimmer shade. And I just think it's a very cozy, cool toned kind of look. Now this white shade actually does have a blue fleck to it, so it just sort of adds to those cool tones. This does give me that sort of moonlight over a snowy field kind of vibe, and I think it's so lovely. So I really do love this one, and I kind of forgot how much I like it, to be honest. I do love cool tones. I feel like I forgot for a while just how much I love cool tone eyeshadows, but now that I remember, it's all I want to play with for the winter. Next, I have two indie palettes. The first one is from Odin's Eye, and this is their Snow Dream palette. I feel like this was one of their holiday palettes from 2 years ago. I love the range of mattes you get with this one. I like that you have some more neutral tones to anchor the looks if you want. I love that you can go quite green with this. We do have this icy sort of blue in here. We have some standard golds. We do have a red, which is not my most reached for shade, but I did create a look last year around Christmas time, and I actually got a lot of comments from you guys, so I might actually recreate it this year and do sort of a tutorial so I can show you how I did it. But one of the things I did was I did use this red for the outer corner. I was trying to go for a very Christmassy look, and I did use this red on the outer corner, and I kind of used the white all over the lid, and then I went in with a very sparkly topper, and of course I did go in with a liner to anchor that. But it was such a pretty Christmassy look, very, very Christmassy themed. So you have to like that. But I thought it was so much fun. I do want to recreate it this year. And then of course you can get some green looks from this and some golds. It's just a really Christmassy color story. I don't really see myself using this one after Christmas or into the new year much. For me, I think this is perfect for this season. The next palette is from Blend Bunny. This is their Longing eyeshadow palette. Now this is probably, aside from Odin's Eye, the most colorful palette that I have to mention. Now this palette gives us some purple, some blue, some green, some cool leaning browns, a more olivey column as well, and we get this more sort of gray blue leaning column. So this palette to me is just a very cool tone palette, and I see so much winter in here. I see a lot of icy looks, I see some frosty looks, some just in general cool tone neutrals. I think it's a perfect winter palette if you want to play with color, but not too much. There is such a great range of mattes in here, but the metallics are like this super diamond dimension type shade that are in those Charlotte Tilbury palettes I mentioned earlier. They're so incredibly dimensional and sparkly and reflective and shifty. They're so, so stunning. I just feel like this is the perfect range of very muted tones. If you're wanting to dip your toes into color, this is a great palette to do that because they're just so much more muted, so it doesn't feel as intense and scary if you're like me. But I still think all of the columns are so beautiful. You could just work in columns if you're not sure what to do. You're going to get a beautiful look from this palette no matter what. This Blend Bunny formula is so fantastic. The mattes are great, but the shimmers are definitely the special part of this because they are so shifty and dimensional. I do think this palette is absolutely stunning. My next palette is from Natasha Denona, and this is not my most used Natasha Denona palette, not because I don't like it, but just because I don't reach for these overly smoky tones that much. But this is the Xenon palette. I believe she came out with this one last year, maybe the year before. The packaging is very wintry. It's all black and it's designed to look like a snowy night. So it has all these white flecks here. And then opening this up, this is an incredibly cool tone color story, very grayscale. All of the names are around winter and snow. So very, very winter appropriate. I don't love a lot of smoky looks, but occasionally I do love to whip this out for these sort of very cool leaning shades. The shimmers in here are gorgeous. She's got a lot of her sparkling foiled formulas in here, which is my favorite shimmer formula. So this one is perfect if you want to go for those smokier looks or those just cool tone looks in general. If you'd like to reach for a lot of those more gray tones, this one is going to be perfect. And the entire theme of the palette is so wintry, so I absolutely had to mention this one. And the last two palettes are from YSL. So these are the most bougie options, but the first one is in 700 over Noir. This is their smokiest palette that they have. So we do have this metallic charcoal. You have this softer brown shade to sort of blend everything. And then you get this gray topper that is just so wet and iridescent and beautiful. If you are looking for a very easy smoky look, this palette will give it to you and it will make it so effortless to create. I have actually created a very smoky look with this palette, actually loved it, and I'm not a smoky eyeshadow lover, but this is my absolute go-to palette for New Year's Eve. I never do anything on New Year's Eve, but I still like to do New Year's Eve makeup, and this is my absolute go-to for that. So I think this is such a great option, especially if you love a good smoky eye. This palette is kind of a must. And the very last palette is also from YSL, and this is in 820 Majestic Riad. Now this was a part of their new collection earlier this year, and this has these gorgeous red tones. I don't typically love red eyeshadow, but this makes me want to wear red eyeshadow. So what I typically do is I will take this shade here, I'll put this one in the crease, I'll use this shade for the outer corner, and then I will use this one for the outer half of the lid, and then I will put this one on top, and it looks so beautiful. This gives me such a beautiful red cranberry type look that I think is so appropriate for Christmas. This might actually be my Christmas palette. This is one of my only palettes that can get me to use a red tone shade like this, and I end up loving the look. So while this one isn't cool toned or smoky, I instantly think of Christmas when I see these more reddish tones, and I'm pretty sure when I first reviewed this palette all the way back in the spring, I instantly thought of Christmas when I saw this one. So I will 100% be reaching for this one going into the holiday season and as I'm playing with more and more reds. But that is it. Those are my top 10 palettes that I am most excited to reach for this holiday season. Let me know, what are your favorite winter palettes? What are your favorite holiday palettes? Let me know all of your thoughts down below. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.